Welcome to another edition of Bible Time. This is a part of our Believers Fellowship daily Bible reading, providing some thoughts, some commentary as we read through the scriptures together. And as we come to this text today, I find some great encouragement because next week I'm going to be able to see some of my grandchildren, which will be a great delight for me. And also next week I start on Medicare. So both of those things, grandchildren, Medicare, kind of remind me that I'm getting older. I'm one of those older guys. And the reason why this text that we're looking at today is encouraging to me because it talks about an older guy who provides a real example for the rest of us. We're looking at Joshua 13 and 14 today. And you'll remember that first 12 chapters of Joshua were basically about the people going in and conquering the land under the leadership of Joshua, defeating the people that are in the land. And now starting in chapter 13, they start dividing the land amongst the tribes of the people of Israel. Chapter 13 talks about the land on the east of the Jordan being divided amongst the 2.5 tribes that are settling there. And then chapter 14 starts the discussion on the dividing of the land west of the Jordan for the other 9.5 tribes. But I want to focus on this old guy who comes up at the end of chapter 14. Chapter 14, verses 6 through 15, basically. His name is Caleb. And Caleb talks about, at the beginning of the verses, the beginning of that section, he refers back to the what was recorded in Numbers 13 and 14. When the 12 tribes were sent in to spy out the land, Caleb was one of those guys. And he's reminding Joshua of that time. Joshua was one of those guys. And they went in, and Joshua and Caleb came back with a good report and encouragement to go in and take the land that the Lord was giving them. The other 10, those that spread a bad report, turned the people against the idea, and that led to their time of wandering in the wilderness. But there was a promise that Caleb was holding on to from that time. It says in verse 9 that Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever." And so he's been holding on to that promise. And when you see that we get to verse 10, he's been holding on to that promise now for 45 years. Now, I want you to think about that. He's waited 45 years for the fulfillment of this promise. And the reason he had to wait wasn't any fault of his own. He was ready to go. He was good to go right then, right there. But the rest of the people weren't. And so 45 years later, that's the 38 years of them wandering in the wilderness, and then the 7 years it took of conquering the land. He's waited these 45 years. Now, just think about what he had to endure during those 45 years. He had to endure all the sin of Israel. I mean, it's their sin that got them into this predicament where they're wandering around in the wilderness, and just wandering around in the wilderness didn't stop their sinning. So he's had to endure the sinning of the nation of people. This people who have been promised, given great promises by God. These people who experienced a great deliverance by God out of Egypt. Yet they're not trusting God. They're rebelling against God. He's had to put up with all that. He's had to see during those 38 years the death of his friends, a lot of his family. They've all died during that time. And he's had to stand almost alone in his faith in the Lord. So, you think that you and I have it tough sometimes. Maybe you have an unbelieving family. Maybe you live in a sinful nation. And you feel like you're standing all alone. Well, he didn't have a church to go to. He didn't have podcasts to listen to. He didn't have Bible time to tune into every day. And yet Caleb was faithful to the Lord during those 45 years. That's the kind of enduring faith that we're talking about as we study the book of Hebrews, which we're going to be coming back to this Sunday. The book of Hebrews is encouraging enduring faith, being faithful all the way to the end. Caleb, he's an example of what that's all about. He's given us an example of what it is to finish well. A lot of people start well, not so many finish well. Caleb, he finishes well. He's a good example of somebody who even in their old age is still ambitious and active for the Lord. Those people are hard to find. But if you want to be like Caleb, then you need to take a look at what he's saying here and seek to follow his example. He's in his old age. He's not looking for something easy to do. He's wanting to take the mountain. He wants to take Hebron. He wants to take the fortified city where the Anakim live, which the thing that made all the other spies and all the people afraid. He's saying, give that to me. I'll take that. I'm 85. I'm good to go. Let's do it. He's still active. He's still trusting. He's still ambitious for the Lord. He's not looking for something easy. And he's not arrogant when he says this. He says in verse 12, so now give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke that day, for you heard on that day how the Anakim were there with great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Lord said. He's counting on the Lord being with him to do this, but he's ready to go do it. It's not going to be easy, but he's ready to go do it. And the key to Caleb here is that 3 times in this text, it makes a reference to the fact that he wholly followed the Lord. Verses 8, verse 9, verse 14. He wholly followed the Lord. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't halfway in with the Lord. He was wholly following the Lord. You want to be an older person, still active, still ambitious, still ready to serve the Lord with all your strength, then you need to be like Caleb. You need to be actively working now to be wholly following the Lord. And that didn't start when he was 85. He already had it when he was 40. That's why he gave the good report when he came back. And that fact that he was wholly following the Lord, that didn't waver during the next 45 years. Just think about that. 45 years he endured waiting for this promise. He was wholly devoted to the Lord. Are you wholly devoted to the Lord? Am I wholly devoted to the Lord? If our lives were put under the microscope, would it come out, yeah, this person is wholly devoted to the Lord? That's something for us all to chew on, to meditate on, to consider today. What are you going to be like when you're 85 years old? Bible is a challenging book. It's because it presents a big God. Caleb believed in that big God. I'm trusting that this will encourage you and me to do the same thing. And we'll see you tomorrow for more Bible time.